Look at me. You think I'm playing? You think I walked in here to make a scene? I came for answers.
I don't have what you're asking for, I swear.
Then start remembering, because this ends tonight.
Sir, let's keep it calm.
I'm calm, but I'm not.
The call came in just after 7:00 p.m. Anonymous. Vague. Carefully worded to sound urgent, but empty of real details. Suspicious armed black male inside an upscale restaurant, possibly wearing a stolen military uniform. No name. No confirmation. No evidence. To Officer Dale Hendricks. This wasn't a warning sign. It was familiar. The kind of call he had responded to dozens of times over 16 years on the force. A situation where his instincts told him exactly what to do before his brain ever caught up. He didn't ask dispatch to verify the report. He didn't call the restaurant manager. He didn't request additional information. In his mind, there was no need. Because these calls always ended the same way. Someone who didn't fit. Someone who looked out of place. Someone he believed didn't belong in rooms like this. Hendricks had built his career on acting first and questioning later. His supervisors called it proactive policing. His colleagues called it confidence. And no one had ever stopped him before. That night, he didn't see a family celebration waiting to be interrupted. He didn't see a decorated war hero. He didn't see a mother celebrating her 70th birthday. All he saw was a target. And as he headed toward Magnolia House, unaware that every step, every word, and every decision would be recorded in unforgiving detail, Officer Dale Hendricks made the first move in what would become the most catastrophic miscalculation of his career. Magnolia House wasn't just a restaurant. It was a statement, a 40-year institution tucked into the wealthiest corner of Kensington, Virginia. White tablecloths pressed to perfection. Crystal glasses catching the glow of low chandeliers. Soft piano music floating through a dining room designed to feel like old money and quiet power. This was the kind of place where reservations were made weeks in advance, where the dress code was enforced without exception, where the clientele was overwhelmingly wealthy, overwhelmingly white, and accustomed to not being questioned. The kind of place where people noticed when someone didn't belong. What most diners didn't realize was that Magnolia House was also one of the most closely monitored spaces in the city. 14 high-definition security cameras had been installed 2 years earlier after a break-in. Every table, every aisle, every entrance, every interaction captured in crystal-clear detail. Continuously recorded and securely stored at Chasse Potrezec Chichinch M. At a small window table near the front of the dining room. Commander Elijah Okonkwo sat across from his mother. The evening sun filtered through sheer curtains, casting a warm glow across polished silverware and folded linen napkins. Okonkwo wore full navy dress whites. His medals rested neatly on his chest, catching the light each time he moved. Across from him, Lillian Okonkwo studied the leather-bound menu with quiet wonder. She had chosen her dress weeks earlier, saving it for this night, her 70th birthday. They weren't rushing. They weren't loud. They weren't causing any disruption at all. They were simply a mother and son, sharing a moment that had taken a lifetime to earn, unaware that the room they sat in was already recording the beginning of a story that would soon shake the entire nation. Commander Elijah Okonkwo wasn't wearing that uniform for show. He had earned every inch of it over 19 years of active duty service in the United States Navy. 4 combat deployments: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia. Places where mistakes cost lives, and hesitation meant never coming home. He wore a silver star on his chest for valor under fire, awarded after he pulled 3 wounded Marines from a collapsing compound in Kandahar, carrying the last one nearly 400 meters while taking rounds from 2 directions. The Purple Heart came later, Fallujah. Shrapnel tearing through his shoulder during a firefight that left him hospitalized for months. He volunteered to redeploy the moment doctors cleared him. Okonkwo had led classified missions that would never be publicly acknowledged, trained foreign special forces units across 3 continents, been personally commended by 2 secretaries of defense for exceptional leadership. But long before the medals and missions, there was just Elijah, a skinny kid growing up in rural Georgia, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Lillian Okonkwo was a public school teacher for 34 years. She poured everything she had into her son's future, sacrificing comfort, vacations, even rest. When Elijah earned his commission and pinned on his SEAL trident, she cried for 3 hours straight. This dinner wasn't about status. It wasn't about recognition. It was about gratitude. A son honoring the woman who made everything possible, never imagining that the uniform meant to symbolize service and sacrifice was about to make him a target instead. Officer Dale Hendricks had worn the badge for 16 years. On paper, he was exactly the kind of officer departments like to showcase. Proactive, assertive, willing to make stops others avoided. His supervisors praised his zero-tolerance approach and his commitment to maintaining order. Internal reviews described him as reliable, focused, effective. But beneath that polished record sat a history few outside the department ever saw. 31 civilian complaints had been filed against Hendricks over the years. 27 of them involved people of color. Each one alleged racial profiling, unlawful detentions, and constitutional violations. Every single complaint had been reviewed by Internal Affairs, and every single one had been dismissed as unfounded. Within the department, Hendricks carried a quiet reputation. Among fellow officers, he was known as the gatekeeper, the one who decided who belonged in certain neighborhoods, businesses, and public spaces and who didn't. His assumption was simple and never challenged: that his badge gave him authority, that his instincts outweighed the Constitution. That accountability was something that happened to other officers in other departments. For 16 years, no supervisor had meaningfully corrected him. No discipline had ever stuck. And with each dismissed complaint, Hendricks grew more confident that the rules simply didn't apply to him. By the time he received the call about Magnolia House, he believed he was untouchable, and he had no idea that every habit, every shortcut, and every unchecked assumption was about to collide on camera with the one man his authority could not intimidate. At Chapter 13, Shi Unupi. M. Officer Hendricks pushed through the front doors of Magnolia House. Both his body camera and his partner's activated the moment their boots hit the marble floor. The footage showed an elegant dining room, low voices, gentle laughter, and glasses clinking softly against porcelain plates. What it also showed, clearly, was what Hendricks didn't do. He didn't stop at the hostess stand. He didn't ask to speak with a manager. He didn't scan the room for any sign of danger. Instead, his body camera captured him walking with purpose, straight through the dining room, past couples in tailored suits, past families in evening dresses, past every white patron seated at their tables. His path never wavered. He stopped directly in front of the only black man in the restaurant. "I need to see your identification," Hendricks said, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "We received a report of someone wearing a stolen military uniform." Commander Okonkwo looked up calmly. No surprise, no panic, just controlled composure shaped by 19 years of military discipline. "Officer," he said evenly, "I'm Commander Elijah Okonkwo, United States Navy." He reached slowly into his jacket and produced his active duty military ID and Department of Defense credentials. holding them steady in the chandelier light. The cameras caught everything: the name, the rank, the official seals. Hendricks barely glanced at them. These could be fake, he said. Anyone can buy a costume online. In that moment, the line between suspicion and discrimination disappeared entirely. The word costume landed like a slap. Across the table, Lillian Okonkwo froze. Her hands tightened around the edge of the menu. 19 years of her son's service reduced to a suspicion spoken casually in a dining room full of strangers. Officer Tara Linden stood just behind Hendricks. Her body camera captured the medals clearly now. The Silver Star, the Purple Heart, decorations she recognized immediately, decorations no costume shop could ever replicate. But she said nothing. Commander Okonkwo inhaled slowly. Military discipline held him steady. His voice never rose. "Officer, those credentials are valid," he said. "I'd like your badge number. And I'd like to speak with your supervisor." For a brief moment, the room went quiet. Then Hendricks's face tightened. His jaw clenched. Being questioned, especially here, especially by this man, was not something he tolerated. "Stop playing games," he snapped. "Stand up and walk outside. Now." Okonkwo didn't move. He remained seated, his hands flat on the table, palms open. Every camera in the room captured the deliberate stillness, the absence of threat, the effort to de-escalate. "I'm not leaving," he said calmly. "I haven't committed a crime." The decision was made in that instant. Not by policy, not by law, but by ego. Hendricks stepped closer, his voice rising, his authority cracking under the weight of being challenged. Around them, diners began to turn in their seats. Phones shifted in pockets. Something was about to happen, and everyone in that room could feel it. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Without warning, Officer Hendricks lunged forward and grabbed Commander Okonkwo by the arm. His body camera jolted violently as he tried to wrench him out of the chair. Plates shattered. Wine glasses exploded against the floor. The dining room erupted in gasps as a decorated Navy SEAL who had not raised his voice, not clenched a fist, not made a single threatening move, was slammed face first into the table. "He's resisting," Hendricks shouted into his radio. But the cameras told a different story. 14 CCTV angles, 2 body cameras, and a dozen cell phones raised instinctively by stunned patrons. Every frame showed the same thing. Commander Okonkwo's hands were still flat on the table. His body locked reflexively. A trained response to sudden force, not aggression. Lillian screamed. The sound cut through the room, raw and terrified. As she watched her son, who had survived firefights and explosions overseas, be brutalized in front of her over dinner. Hendricks forced metal cuffs onto Okonkwo's wrists with excessive force, the steel biting into his skin until blood appeared. His dress uniform tore at the shoulder. Metals ripped free and scattered across the hardwood floor. Then came the moment that would haunt the nation. As Hendricks dragged Okonkwo toward the exit, his boot came down hard directly on the fallen Silver Star. The metal crunched underfoot, a symbol of valor earned under enemy fire. Crushed by an officer who never bothered to check the truth, standing right in front of him. As Commander Okonkwo was dragged toward the door, the dining room fell into chaos. Patrons stood frozen. Some shouted. Others fumbled for their phones, hands shaking as they recorded what was unfolding in front of them. A celebration had turned into a public trauma in less than a minute. Behind them, Lillian Okonkwo collapsed in her booth. Her body gave out under the shock. Servers rushed to her side. Someone screamed for an ambulance. A cardiac episode triggered by watching her son be brutalized in front of her eyes sent her to the floor of the restaurant he had brought her to as a birthday gift. Outside, Commander Okonkwo was forced into a patrol car. His torn dress whites were stained with food and blood. His wrists throbbed inside, cuffs tightened far beyond necessity. At the station, he was booked at 8:14 p.m. The charges read like fiction: resisting arrest, assault on a police officer, trespassing, stolen valor. Every single charge was contradicted by footage already stored on the department's own servers. Okonkwo requested a phone call immediately. Denied. He asked again at 9:00 p.m. Denied. Again at 10:00. Denied. 4 hours passed before he was allowed to contact anyone, a clear violation of his constitutional rights. Documented by the holding cell surveillance cameras recording in high definition, and the cameras captured something worse. During booking, Officer Hendricks stood outside the cell with 2 other officers, laughing as he gestured toward Okonkwo's torn uniform. "These people think they can put on a costume and sit wherever they want," he said. The words echoed through the concrete hallway. Meanwhile, 6 miles away, Lillian Okonkwo lay alone in a hospital bed, frightened, medicated, and repeatedly asking one question no one could answer. "Where is my son?" Inside Kensington Police Department, the night continued like any other. Paperwork, jokes in the hallway, screens glowing with surveillance feeds. No one was watching closely enough. But Officer Tara Linden couldn't shake what she had seen. She had watched a calm, compliant man get slammed into a table. She had seen legitimate military credentials ignored. She had heard the word costume spoken with contempt. And she had watched a mother collapse while her son was dragged away in handcuffs. During a brief break, Linden stepped outside. She didn't call a supervisor. She didn't call Internal Affairs. She called Naval Station Norfolk. Her voice was quiet, controlled, and urgent as she identified herself, described the incident, and gave one name: Commander Elijah Okonkwo. Within minutes, the Navy began verifying what Hendricks had dismissed without a glance: active duty status, security clearance, decorations, deployment history. Every detail checked out. By 11:47 p.m. Rear Admiral Franklin Dubois, Okonkwo's commanding officer, was briefed at home. He listened in silence as the report unfolded, his expression hardening with every sentence. At exactly midnight, the phone rang at Kensington Police Department. The call was recorded automatically by the department's system. "This is Rear Admiral Franklin Dubois," the voice said, calm but unmistakably furious. "You are currently holding a decorated Navy SEAL on charges that are demonstrably false." There was a pause. "I am directing you to release Commander Okonkwo immediately. If he is not released within the hour, I will be contacting the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, and the Judge Advocate General's office." The room went silent. For the first time that night, someone in Kensington PD understood exactly how badly things had gone wrong, and the badge that had felt untouchable just hours earlier suddenly meant nothing at all. By dawn, the story had escaped the walls of Kensington Police Department. Restaurant patrons had uploaded their videos overnight. Clips from multiple angles spread across social media at lightning speed: a Navy SEAL in dress whites being slammed to a table, a mother screaming, a silver star crushed under a police boot. 40 million views in 48 hours. Veterans organizations mobilized instantly. Congressional offices were flooded with calls. Military families across the country watched in disbelief as the footage played on loop. That morning, the president was briefed during his intelligence summary. Senior aides described the reaction as immediate and unmistakable. Within hours, the White House issued a statement that ricocheted across every major news outlet. What happened to Commander Elijah Okonkwo is a disgrace to the nation he has spent his life defending. It read, "No American, especially one who has bled for this country, should be brutalized for the color of their skin." The Department of Justice opened a federal civil rights investigation the same day. By Chest 0A. M. FBI agents arrived at Kensington Police Department with federal warrants. Servers were seized. Body camera footage was secured. Internal communications were locked down. The incident was no longer a local arrest gone wrong. It had become a national reckoning. And as the cameras rolled and the country watched, the system that had protected Officer Hendricks for 16 years began to collapse under the weight of its own recorded truth. What federal investigators uncovered went far beyond one officer and one arrest. Over the next several months, the Department of Justice pieced together a pattern that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. More than 200 civilian complaints filed against Kensington Police Department officers. The overwhelming majority from people of color. Complaints quietly dismissed. Evidence labeled corrupted. Body camera footage marked as lost. Internal affairs investigations closed without interviews, without review, without accountability. When the case finally went to trial, the courtroom was packed every single day. Media lined the back rows. Veterans in uniform stood shoulder to shoulder before dawn just to secure seats. The prosecution's evidence was devastating. Both body camera recordings were played in full. All 14 CCTV angles from Magnolia House were shown simultaneously on split screens, frame by frame. The holding cell surveillance footage captured Officer Hendricks mocking a torn Navy uniform, laughing with colleagues as he stood outside the cell. Then the witnesses took the stand. 67 prior victims testified, one after another, describing the same pattern: unprovoked stops, humiliation, fabricated charges, and racial targeting that mirrored what happened at Magnolia House. Commander Elijah Okonkwo testified last. He stood in full dress whites, his medals restored to his chest, and described surviving firefights overseas, then described being slammed into a table in front of his mother on her birthday. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent, guilty on all 14 counts. At sentencing, the courtroom was silent. Judge Raymond Cortez, a retired Marine who had served 2 tours in Vietnam, looked directly at Dale Hendricks as he delivered words that would later be quoted in law schools across the country. Commander Okonkwo swore an oath to defend this nation, the judge said, and he honored that oath with his blood, his body, and 19 years of his life. You swore an oath to protect and serve, and you violated it every single day you wore that badge. The sentence was swift and final. 52 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole. 3 supervisors were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 8 to 15 years for conspiracy and cover-up. Kensington Police Department was placed under a federal consent decree. 14 officers were terminated. Internal Affairs was dissolved and rebuilt under civilian oversight. The department that had protected Hendricks for 16 years was dismantled and reconstructed from the ground up. Commander Elijah Okonkwo filed a civil rights lawsuit that settled for $34.7 million, the largest individual civil rights settlement in Virginia history. He used part of the funds to establish the Okonkwo Veteran Civil Rights Foundation, providing free legal representation to service members and veterans facing discrimination. Months later, he stood in the East Room of the White House as the president presented him with the Presidential Citizens Medal. In the front row sat his mother, Lillian, fully recovered, wearing the same blue dress she had worn to Magnolia House this time, with tears of pride instead of terror. Today, A small plaque hangs near the window table at Magnolia House. This table is dedicated to Commander Elijah Okonkwo. All are welcome here. And in the end, it wasn't outrage that brought justice. It wasn't power. It wasn't privilege. It was the camera. The silent witness that recorded the moment unchecked authority met the truth and lost.